Ask the Experts segment. Today's topic is Boys Don't Cry. Let's talk about that. And our expert today, we're very grateful to welcome Nkini Pasha. Nkini is SADAG's board member and current board vice chairperson. He joined SADAG in 2001 and also acts as the senior spokesperson for various TV and radio interviews. Nkini is very hands-on in SADAG's programs and initiatives, including media campaigns, outreach programs, youth projects, and the list goes on. After graduating as a medical scientist, Nkini went on to specialize in hematology before spending 10 years in the medical and pharmaceutical industries. Nkini also studied towards a marketing diploma, and during his tenure in the pharmaceutical industry, he established himself as a marketing expert. And today, he's our expert on Facebook Fridays. Welcome, Nkini. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Daryl, for that intro. Quite humbling. Always great to, have these conversations, we can't have enough of. So I'm glad to be here and I'm glad we're having this discussion.
Thank you. So let's dive right in. So our theme for today, when you hear the phrase, boys don't cry, what feelings or thoughts come up for you? And why do you think that message is still so common today?
Yeah, Daryl, I think, the first thing that, comes to mind is that, as a boy, you must be tough. You must not show emotion. You must be strong. So almost like, you are this rock that has absolutely no feelings, has absolutely no emotions. And, so that really is what comes to mind. But also, that you should not be regarded as a sissy, as a weakly, So to show that you are a man, you must actually adhere to this masculinity gold standard that really speaks to that, to the fact that you should not feel any emotion or at least show, that you are going through, an emotional or, psychological distress.
Absolutely. And like you say, so many young boys are taught to hide their emotions. And what do you think is the long-term impact of that, especially on men's health?
Yeah. Look, and I mean, maybe let's sort of, start at the beginning, how we raise our boy child, how us, Daryl, ourselves as men, how
Oh,
we
yeah.
were raised, what we were taught, how we were socialized. Really it was drilled into us that you need to present yourself in a certain way. You need to be this rock. You need to be, this tough. Right. Now, the long-term effects of that is that as men, we therefore are not able, to show our emotions. We're not able, to speak up. We're not able to say, you know what, I'm actually battling, from X, Y, and Z. So we're more focusing on the physical, as a man, but whatever happens emotionally and psychologically, that we are not able to actually confront, those challenges, as men. So unfortunately, then what that drives us, it drives us into, a sort of like a slippery slope, because now you then as a man try and find other ways to try and cope, to try and really camouflage these psychological and emotional distress that you have. It impacts negatively as well in our relationships, because we believe that, as a man, this is, how I should act. This is how I should treat, my spouse. And this is how I should be, within the family and, structure. So really it has long-term, effects. And I think oftentimes those effects we have seen that they've got severe consequences.
Exactly. And like you say, it's almost like we lose this language to speak about it, because working in the call center, so many of the calls start out with, I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know how to talk about this. And that's often
Yes.
like stopping them from phoning in.
Yes.
And like you
Mhm.
mentioned, they can often describe to us the physical symptoms. I'm not
Yeah.
sleeping, I'm exhausted.
Mm.
And that's
Yes,
fantastic because it is a starting point.
yes,
But yeah,
yes.
we want to
Yeah.
have these
Yeah.
conversations.
And also remember, Daryl, I mean, oftentimes as well, some types, or in fact, if not all, sort of, mental health conditions do have obviously the physical symptoms.
Exactly.
So as a man, I might come and, if I'm suffering from a type of an anxiety disorder, talk more about heart issues, not being
Yes.
able to breathe, properly. So
Yeah.
those are the kind of symptoms that perhaps will drive me to seek medical attention,
Yeah.
but I am not going to actually say that, actually, I am battling emotionally, I am battling psychologically. So if I'm not, for example, I'm suffering from insomnia, I stress a lot, I would rather call that stress, and that is as a result of, or, I'm going through challenges in my marriage, or stress as a result of, at work, this is what is happening. I've got a lot of deadlines, I've got a lot of pressure, financial pressures as well, pressure to support my family, to provide, so it becomes easy for us as men to talk about those kind of
Yeah.
challenges. And then what we then do is that we then try and seek other self-help of other ways to, remedy what, really we are battling, with a type of a mental health condition. So it becomes a vicious cycle, if I can put it
Yeah.
that way.
And Kenny, let's now imagine for a moment a parallel world. So
Yeah.
if men were encouraged from a young age to show their emotions openly,
Yeah.
honestly, how
Yeah.
do you think our society would look different today?
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's like it really to be a huge paradigm shift without a doubt,
Yeah.
um, completely. I mean, really, I think, as well, there are many societal challenges, and when you look even with things like, the gender-based violence, yes, there are, cases where it's perpetrated by women, but largely, I think if you look at the cases that are reported, it's men, that really perpetuate, GBV. So even things like those, really that would actually impact positively, in our society. I think we raise our boy child, we need to go back to the basics and say, are we teaching our sons to first and foremost acknowledge that they are human? You are human, and therefore, as a human, you really have got all, the senses. You can really, you're not immune from, life curveballs that gets thrown at you. You're not immune from actually having, any type of a mental health condition, because it is a medical condition.
Mm,
So I think that really the change can only be positive. We have seen as well that, there has been cases of what we call family suicide. So as a man, not only do I actually, end my life, but I actually take out my family before, I do that. And remember as well, Daryl, as men, oftentimes when we look to suicide, and I don't want to say successful suicide because it's almost like it's a positive thing, but we actually are able to, successfully take away our lives by suicide, because as men, we look to much more lethal means,
yeah.
so really we can turn the tide, we can reduce, the family suicides that we are seeing, really by starting to really change our approach in how we raise our boy child. But also remember, yes, we're focusing on boys, but even girls, because in societies that if, I'm a girl, or I'm a, female, I'm a lady, there's certain expectations that I have on my
True.
men.
Yeah.
So that as well fuels, what we are seeing. But also the positive as well will be the stigma. Will break down the
Mm,
stigma that really is associated with men and mental health. Because as a man, I'm not going to talk about my psychological and emotional distress, because I'm going to be judged. I'm going
yeah.
to be made fun of. I'm going to be disrespected. and really culturally across different, cultures, that is also perpetuated that, as a man, this is how you must be. There's this golden, masculinity gold standard that you must adhere to. So really that will have, quite a, a huge impact positively in our society in general.
Oh, totally agree.
Mm.
And Kini, in your expertise, what do you believe happens emotionally when a man is constantly told to be strong or toughen up instead of being allowed to authentically feel what they're feeling?
Mm, mm. Look, it's got far-reaching consequences, really severe consequences. As a man, it then forces, you as a man forces us as men to bottle in what we are faced with, the psychological and emotional challenges that we are faced with. We then seek other means to cope. So what will then tend to happen is, we will then engage in what we call endorphin dependent behavior. I'm going to go into the gym, I'm going to pump that iron because that's my outlet. So we then tend to seek other outlets. We look to recreational drugs, as well as a way of trying to cope. Because remember now, I cannot express what I'm actually going through. We look to alcohol, risky taking behavior, having multiple sexual partners, so anything else that really tries to just, keep this suppressed. I'm going to just suffer in silence. I'm going to look at other means. But of course, we know that that also then creates, bigger issues because now it starts to impact your family quite negatively. So the relationships that you have starts to be affected in a negative way. But also because then you are actually, having untreated, mental health condition, suicide becomes the ultimate severe consequence, of untreated, mental health condition in men. So really encouraging, us as men to open up, encouraging our boy child to say, it is actually okay, to speak up. It's actually okay to experience emotional distress and really allow that, to be normalized, if I can put it that. So
Yeah,
we need to start, changing, our approach and really creating, safer spaces, conducive spaces, for us as men and the young ones, to be able to actually, raise our hands and say, I need help, or, speak up and say, this is what I'm actually,
yeah.
confronted with. You are human, and these are medical, conditions like you would have, asthma, you're diabetic, nobody judges you that you have called that upon yourself, or you are weak, for actually suffering from that medical condition.
Absolutely. And often with emotions, we feel them, but when they're told to toughen up in that regard, it starts creating this thing of like, okay, those are good emotions, these are bad emotions. And then things like getting angry is thought of as standing up, but
Yes,
being like
yes,
sore, like grieving or anything like that is immediately
yeah,
sort of, well, that's not a
yeah,
manly thing to feel, and that's where
yes.
that whole psychological turmoil sets in.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and I think Daryl, it's I mean, also remember as well, there's cultural beliefs as well that are
Exactly.
is
Yeah. And I
at
always find
play
that so
here as well.
interesting within the SADC community is all the
Yeah,
cultures that we're exposed to now.
Exactly. Exactly. But I mean, you realize when we're speaking, about men and mental health, that there's huge similarities, all right, across the different, cultural groups, in our society. It really, really affects men in a bad way.
Yeah.
So really we need to also be saying, well, is this part of our culture really relevant in this day and age. Perhaps it was never relevant, but it's something that obviously is indoctrinated. We carry it through, but we need to start having those conversations. We need to start challenging, some of these, cultural practices, because we have seen cases of, the results thereof, that really are unwanted results within our society. So we need to start changing the narrative and quite intentionally start encouraging start encouraging, feel those emotions. I mean, my personal story, for example, when I lost, both my parents, and you get told the first thing that, what, when you go out there on the day of the funeral, or as people are coming in to obviously pay their respects, that you must man up. You can't be crying in front of people, so you can see how that is sort of hugely, so well, it's part of our lives. All right.
Yeah.
So we need to really start challenging that and saying, look, it's okay. It's okay to actually cry as a man. It's because you're letting out your emotions. That is part of the healing. And, that is part of being human. And
Yeah.
it's okay. We should,
Yes.
you're not going to be judged. So and really that cuts across different pockets of our society, of our lives, be it at work, within the family, within your, social circles, that really having more and more of these kind of, conversations,
Absolutely.
creates the awareness and the education, and that, we definitely then can start, turning the tide, and start seeing, an improvement in as far as this is concerned.
And Kenny, I feel you so
Mhm.
much on that, put on the
Mhm.
brave face thing.
Yeah.
I think almost any man, boy
Yeah.
listening to this,
Yeah.
resonates with that. And I
Yeah.
remember wearing that brave face and someone just putting
Mhm.
that kind hand on my shoulder and just asking the right question. And it almost opened a floodgate. So the
Yeah.
next question is, what are some of the signs that a man may be struggling internally, even if he is wearing that brave face, even if on the outside he seems fine? What are the signs?
Look, and I mean, the signs are definitely there. But maybe let me say this, Daryl, before I get to the signs and symptoms, so to speak. If you look at the statistics, right, for example, I mean, we're saying a third of, our population does or suffer from a type of a mental health condition at some point in their life. But if you look at the statistics, it counts, mostly it's women that are included in the statistics. And of course, men, we don't present, and therefore we are not included in the statistics. However, if you look at the suicide rates, it's almost telling, a completely, inverse story to that, men actually, take away their lives more than women. Now, when you are now confronted with the situation, as I said, with men, because we don't, speak up, we don't open up, we look to other means. But men, of course, then present differently. Than women when it comes to mental health conditions. I think as men, we tend to show a lot more aggression. So obviously the changing mood is there, but we show more irritability, more aggression. And often that sort of makes it a little bit complex to really see that, there is a problem, we know, in as far as men are concerned, because that's someone will say, but that's typical man behavior. That's what you expect in a man. A man must be macho, must be ready to, attack. But that really could be a sign that there is an underlying mental health condition. Of course, when you look at, change in your sleeping, patterns as well, your eating, patterns, as well. But critically, and I think what we're seeing most of with men is the use of substances, the use of recreational drugs, the use of alcohol to numb that pain, and I know that oftentimes it's almost regarded as a badge of honor, as a man to be able to boost and say, well, I can finish a case of beer, or I can, finish a
Yeah.
bottle of spirit
Yeah.
like it's nothing.
The macho thing.
But actually that can really be a camouflage, to a much more serious, mental health condition that as a man, I am trying to self-medicate. I'm trying, to deal with and to cope with. And of course, I mean, the other classical symptoms, will present, as well. I mean, if it's it's major depressive disorder, your change in mood will be there, without a doubt, and if it's anxiety disorders, for example, those sort of physiological, the surge in your, adrenaline, not being able to sleep, having, changes in your, your breathing and your, heart, and that also then can, as I said earlier, a man then will present and say, well, I've got heart conditions, but meantime, it's that underlying mental health condition. Constant and, exposure to stress, will definitely lead to a much more serious, condition, mental health condition.
So true. And why do you think so many men reach out for help only when things are already very serious or completely overwhelming?
Mhm. Daryl, it's lack of knowledge, and I think when I
Mm,
say ignorance, I put it, with respect, because the lack of awareness, the lack of knowledge, the education around this to say, I'm suffering from this. This is actually a medical condition, and I need to seek help.
yes.
So the breaking through that stigma, and going against this masculinity gold standard,
Mm.
it's really what obviously prevents most of us to come forward, to seek help. But it is important that, we start breaking that down. We start, speaking more, as men. That's the only way that really we can get help. And I mean, there is help. Mental health conditions can be, treated, they can be managed, they can be controlled, and you are able to live, and lead a much healthier, mentally healthier, life for yourself and for your family, and obviously your society at large as well.
Yeah, and like you say, that sort of lack of knowledge, like and when we started this conversation, it's scary to phone in and try and describe something because for some people
Mhm.
it may feel like heaviness. For
Yeah.
others, it's complete emptiness.
Mm.
So, like, and
Mm.
that is just to get that conversation starting. You don't have to
Yes.
wait until,
Mhm.
um, yeah, and
Mhm.
on that,
Until it's too late.
that's
Until it's too late,
yes, until it's
A- and the same way, we're seeing with cancer, for example, right? It moves in different stages. You've got stage
exactly.
one. By the time you get, and it's still the case, in fact, that most people will present, at a much later stage where now, the cancer has metastasized, it's moved into
Yeah.
other parts of the body. It becomes a lot harder, to treat and to contain. So, we always emphasize the importance of presenting. The sooner you present, the sooner you get help, the sooner you commence on your treatment, the better the outcomes are going to be. So it is important that we keep driving this message to say we need to speak up, because like cancer, mental health as well, mental health conditions, the longer it lingers on, it's not treated, it's not managed, really the more severe the consequences are. So really the sooner you
Mm.
present, you come forward, really, the better. And really to just start also challenging, this perception that, as a man, I'm strong, I'm tough, I can handle anything, I can tackle anything, bring it on. Imagine you're a sponge. You just keep taking and taking. You're gonna get to a point where you can't absorb anymore.
Anyway.
Then what happens? So it's important, to have that outlet. It's important to speak up, to get that help. The sooner you are, the better the outcomes of your mental health condition. Yeah.
So, in getting people to reach out sooner and speak about their feelings, what role can us as family, friends, and kind of significantly and relevantly here, father figures, How did they create spaces where boys and men feel safe to do so?
I always say education, right? So when you empower yourself with the knowledge and what we are doing now, engaging in these kind of discussions or conversations empowers us to really understand, what we are dealing with, to understand, what is mental health? What are the mental health conditions? How do I get help? But also, it really empowers us to really start having those conversations, with our boy child, with our girl child as well. Because, as I say, there's also that expectation that comes from, the girl child or the female to say, but I'm a female, you are a man, you're the man of the house. Therefore, this is, indoor must, as they say, the more sort of social media lingo. So really challenging ourselves as parents, challenging ourselves as brothers, as uncles, as community members as well, to really encourage and create those safe spaces, to really have open discussions, with our boy child. I'm at this event today, and one of the speakers earlier, said that, he growing up, he had he was never really allowed to have discussions with the father. But the one time that happened, he was sat down by his father, but the conversation was one way. It was the father telling him what he disliked and what he expected, and that. So really to ensure that we have, two-way conversations with our boy child,
Yes.
open conversations with our boy child, really, start changing that perception that as a man, you must not feel X, Y, and Z, or you'll be regarded as a, weakling. I think there is power in really being, so in touch with, your emotions, so in touch with your psychological, well-being, your mental health that we speak about, because that affects every facet of your life. I regard it as, it anchors every pillar of your life, how you view yourself, how you relate to yourself, how you engage with the environment that you exist in, the relationships that you have, and with those that are around you, and how well you are going to
Mm.
actually, evolve and, engage with your work, progress in, if you are studying, and from a young age into adulthood, and, and so forth. So really it is going back to basics. And I say back to basics is to really challenge those, the what we are indoctrinated with, those beliefs, this masculinity gold standard, to say you don't have to, the pressure, we need to drop it, to say you don't have to, you are human, you are going to experience, you've got
Right.
senses, and you are going to experience different emotions, and it's actually okay to be expressive, about your emotions. If you're having emotional distress, it's okay. Talk about it. Cry if you want to cry, and really is to start sort of instilling, this belief that we are all human, and encourage the expressiveness, and really, having the opportunity and the ability to break down the stigma and to get the help, that you so need. You sit with guys, we talk about cars, we talk about how we can make more money, we talk about sports, right? But we neglect
Yeah.
really what is at the core of, what we are faced with, the challenges that we have. So also within our social circles, we need to start normalizing, to say, if I say, are you okay, dude, how are you doing, is
Yes.
not the superficial,
Exactly.
but you really also, encourage that in our social circles, to say, let's talk, guys.
Yes.
It's oftentimes when people say, wow, Ngini was, had it all. He was doing so well and he was in control. But then here I am, I've looked to suicide as a solution, so there really, really is, is a lot that we can do, and that can positively impact, our boy child and impact us as men, and start turning the tide, that we are seeing, and especially with the suicide rate, that we are seeing in our society.
No, I so feel you on this. And even one of
Mm,
our supervisors here in the call center, Teboho, he often says,
mhm.
for so long it's been this cliche of men don't talk, but we've got to
Yeah.
start moving away from it because they are talking. And like what you're saying is our role as family, friends, fathers is to listen.
Yes.
Instead of, okay, we can talk about that, but not
Mm,
this, like to actually
yes.
listen to what's being said. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
on the topic of listening, to
Mhm.
the men, to everyone listening right now who are tired of being strong all the time, what would you say to them? And then also, how can we start redefining what it means to be strong as a man in today's world?
Really, I think, when I started the latter part of your question, how can we be strong? And I think really there is power in being close to your emotions, in really being in
100%.
touch
Yeah.
with really who you are, express your, emotional challenges, your psychological, challenges. We are all human. We will face, life curveballs. That is a given, but we can choose how we actually deal with that, So really taking back the power is by acknowledging first and foremost that I'm human. And therefore, yes, I'm human first. I'm a male, and therefore, so really that is what really we encourage, but also empower yourself with the knowledge. I think we kind of like push under the rug a lot of from a mental health perspective, and main is that we sweep a lot under the rug, because I'm sitting there with my group of friends and I'm thinking it's not mainly to come to the guys and talk about what I'm faced with within my family, or my wife is doing this, or my partner is doing that, I'm going to be judged. So really, we need to break that down and allow those conversations to happen within our circles, to really learn and empower ourselves more about mental health conditions, and really the effects of untreated mental health condition, the severe consequence thereof. I think a lot of times, when people come forward and they say, well, my husband or my boyfriend and my partner, very aggressive, and alcoholic, or uses recreational drugs, but without going to the root cause. So really, it compels us to also, dig deeper in our conversations with, with our male counterparts, be it your brother, be it your uncle, be it your husband, be it your boyfriend, to really just start, knocking on those doors to try and get deeper, because there is that root cause, and it's not what is regarded as normal male or man behavior. So we need to really have a paradigm shift in, in as far as this is concerned, and challenge ourselves in our daily, even our language, the things that we say, the cultural beliefs, how we raise our boy child is really all covering, sort of covering all the bases, to ensure that we can, see a positive change, when it comes to men and mental health.
Totally. And like I actually personally just find that it's when a man steps in and actually asks for the help. I find that one of the bravest things, because by nature, I think we're supposed to live in community. We are social
Yes.
creatures. And the
Yes.
moment you ask for help, you're no longer trying to keep this secret. You're not trying
Mm,
to figure it
yeah.
out. And we can't be expected to have all the solutions. So
Yes. Yeah.
asking for that assistance, because it is out there
Yes.
and we want to
Yeah.
connect you with that. That's the brave.
Absolutely. Totally, totally. Well, you've put it so well. I think, it's hugely commendable. And I mean, we've had conversations even, as SEDEC on the different platforms, with men that have come forward and said, look, I'm actually either, dealing with, or, experiencing or living with or suffering from a type of a mental health condition, because we need more of us to come forward, and talk, and, and in so doing, you really can then be an enabler and, encouraging, another sort of man or another boy that, is really feeling ashamed and feeling scared, to be judged and to be discriminated against, that if they speak up and they seek help, that they are not a real man. I think we need to change this whole slogan of tigers don't cry. Tigers do
Yes.
cry. Let's see those tears. Show your emotions. There is so much power, because not only are you regaining the relief that it's therapeutic, but also, what, you are potentially saving your life as well, and that of your family, by so doing as a man. It's absolutely powerful.
And Kini, thank you so much. This has been enlightening, so much wisdom, truth, authenticity, and strength, and all of that. So thank you for giving us that on a Friday.
Right.
It's so
Thank you very
appreciated.
much. Thank you very
It's
much. And
been a
always a
pleasure.
great pleasure to have these conversations. And yeah, look forward to
And may
another
they
one soon.
continue.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you, Nkini.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.